Okay, we are on 13b1. We have some wild stuff coming up in just a second. But before we do that, I want to revisit, as I said I would, the end of last week's class. So let's just recap where we left off on 13b1. The Gemara told us that the tziniut that you found in Rachel made sure that she was zochet to have someone like Shaul. And the tziniut of Shaul made sure that he was zochet to give birth to a grandchild like Esther. That each one of them exhibited an element of modesty. And we explained that modesty over here does not mean the clothing or the length of your sleeves or if you're wearing short shorts, right? It means that there are things about your good deeds or things that are important that you don't reveal to everyone. You're not a loudmouth jabbering about things that need to be or should be kept quiet, okay? And what is the example? The Gemara tells us that Rachel, what was her act of tziniut? That Yaakov gave her the simanim, and she saw, when Lavan tried to swap in Leah, so she saw that her sister would get humiliated. And she was she couldn't bear for that to happen. So she gave the simanim to Leah, and Leah wound up, Yaakov thought Leah was Rachel, he married her, and then, and that was the act of tziniut. So we did not really delve into what was the tziniut in that story. So the commentators say an idea that the tziniut of Rachel in that was that she didn't say anything to, to Lavan. She didn't say to her father, look, Yaakov and I made up signs, we had an arrangement. We know you're going to try and pull something, so we have a special code, and that's the tziniut that's brought in the case of Rachel. I want to bring just a couple of interesting pieces into this Gemara before we move forward. The first piece I want to talk about is, what were the simanim? So yes, last time Morris gave me the code that I temporarily forgot. The rain in Spain falls mainly on the plain. Okay, so you could say, where does it fall? On the plain. Hazaku Baruch. Or you could ask them what the code is, to the Bet Knesset 613. That's like that's the most common offender in synagogues, right? So there's codes that you have. One of the opinions is that what was the code that he gave to Rachel? He taught her Hilchot Nidah, the laws of family purity. So when it says that she gave over the simanim, it doesn't mean there was a trick word, a password, a riddle. It was, he taught it to her, and he would know it was her if she was behaving in the way and acting in the way that was appropriate for someone who was following the laws of family purity. Rachel taught her sister how to behave in that way, and that was what she was given over. There's a second answer that's brought that says the simanim that Rachel gave. And the second answer is going to blow your mind. It was that he communicated with Rachel, and he said the siman was, I'm going to ask you who you are, and you'll tell me. The Gemara, I'm not going to get into it. The Gemara talks about this idea that what does someone do to make sure that the person they're sleeping with is their wife? And they have to make sure, they're supposed to make sure that they ask the person, they hear their voice in the dark before the person. That way he knows it's his wife. That's what the halakha says. Very interesting kind of halakha. Rachel understood that Yaakov would ask for that in order to ensure that the woman he was with was actually his wife. So she stayed in the room, in the bedroom that they were in, and when Yaakov asked for Rachel, she spoke in her voice, and that way Yaakov understood that it was Leah.
That's why Yaakov didn't know till the day later.
Till the morning after.
Wow.
Wild. Now, we started off by saying this idea that when someone does something, right, what happens? It comes back to them. Rachel had the tziniut, we said, to be able to understand, not to share it with Lavan, not to tell anyone what was going on, not to tip the hand. My friends, I want to go a little bit further. The pasuk tells us something extraordinary. Later on in the evolution of this story, Leah is married to Yaakov. Rachel gets married to Yaakov. Leah has Reuben, Shimon, Levi, Yisachar. Reuben, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda. She's got 4 kids. How many does Rachel have? 0. Reuven goes out in the time of Kitzir HaHitim, goes out and he collects dudaim. Dudaim is a certain type of a plant. Yasmin, according to some opinions, others want to say it's like a ginseng root type of a plant, okay? But the idea that Rabbeinu Bahya says is that this plant was something that helped fertility. Rachel comes to her sister and says, can I have the flowers that your son brought for you? It's obviously something that was rare, was not easy to find. Reuven brought back for his mother. Rachel said, can I have the flowers? Leah says to Rachel, Hame'at kachtech et ishi, is it not enough that you took my husband? You came into this marriage now, you took my husband, and now you want to take also the flowers of my son? Ask all the commentators, what kind of chutzpah? This is the OG. Oh no, she didn't. I took your husband? How could you say that to her? How could she say that to her? If the Rachel gave her the simanim. Answer the commentators something incredible that brings this Gemara and sets it on fire. You know why Leah said that to Rachel? Because Rachel never told Leah that she was giving her the simanim.
Rachel?
Never told Leah that she was giving her the simanim. That means, we just said already that what happened, that she gave her the signs of, what's it called? Of Nida.
Okay.
So she acted in the way that the halakha was. Rachel never told her, oh, Yaakov made up a sign with me, a signal, he's trying to make sure he's not going to marry you. Leah understood her whole life. What did she understand? Because Rachel never told her. Look, dad switched, obviously Yaakov agreed. So Leah thought, okay, we're supposed to be Rachel, but look, Yaakov, dad changed his mind, Yaakov also changed his mind.
Wow.
Rachel didn't want her sister to be embarrassed, not just from anybody else, but also in herself. So she never uttered one word. My friends, and then you hear your sister say that. Is it not enough you took my husband? What should Rachel have answered? Your husband! Rachel doesn't say anything. That's the ultimate siniut.
Wow. Major item.
Wow.
And it was in that moment that Rachel merited to have children and to get pregnant. If God doesn't want you to get pregnant, it don't matter what you take.
Near-daf status.
Exactly. Boom.
What do you say?
Nirdaf status. Elokim yivakesh itar nirdaf. God chooses the underdog, the one that's chased, the one that has a chance to say something back and does not say anything. So when Rachel does it, fine. I just want to bring out that HaKadosh Baruch Hu always pays attention to everything we do and how we do it. And ultimately that then comes back and we experience that in our own lives. My friends, I just want to share with you, according to this opinion that we brought, that Rachel came and she was there in the room and she answered, according to that opinion, which is different, how beautiful is it that Yaakov Avinu uses a voice to convince that he's the other brother. And what happens to Yaakov himself? He uses the voice to convince his father that he's really Esav. What comes back to roost in his own house?
Wow.
That the other sister uses her voice to convince. Unbelievable.
You're blowing us away today.
Not crazy? So I told you I wanted to come back to this. Be'ezat Hashem. You know, I wanted to come back to this. Okay. So let's come back. So now we find that the tziniut of Rachel creates the tziniut of, what's it called? Of Shaul, which creates it. What was the tziniut of Shaul? Shaul HaMelech is chosen to be the king. Now I want to just present this for a second, because the lesson here is so powerful. Shaul goes out to find some lost donkeys. He's wandering around, shufing the hamor. Okay? That's he's trying to go find the hamor that went wandering that got lost. On this journey, he meets Shmuel. Shmuel anoints him to be the king. But unfortunately for Shaul, unfortunately for Shaul because he wouldn't have done it anyway, Shaul did not have Instagram. He didn't have Facebook. He didn't have TikTok. He wasn't able to tell anyone that he was a king. So who knows that Shaul is the king? Shaul and Shmuel. And he comes back, his uncle says, hey, what's going on? Where were you? He said, I was looking for some donkeys. That's Shaul's response. How often do we feel the need? You got a promotion. The company gave you a new car. They, changed your pay. Have something amazing. I did something great. I mentioned this morning, someone that came to me with a question that I was so blown away by. I was so impressed. And I mentioned him today in the class. He didn't look up. He didn't raise his hand. He didn't say it was me. I want him to know how precious his question is. He's sitting in this room now as well. That's tzniut. I did something good. I didn't do it for the... Person has to look for mitzvot that he could do undercover. MI6, Navy SEALs, shin flipping bet. Which mitzvot could you do that no one in the world knows about? You don't tell anyone, not your wife, not your children. You should tell your children about a lot of mitzvot that you do. But there has to be some things that you do, and you're doing it only for the right reasons. The beauty of tzniut is not just that it's modesty, but the pasuk says hatsnei lechet, which means walk modestly. Hatsnei lechet im elokecha. Because when a person does it arrogantly, who are they walking with? All the people who are clapping. When they do it with tzniut, who are they walking with? Hashem. In Hashem. They're only walking with God. Let's continue. Now comes Esther, and Esther, what happens? Esther also is able to not say who she is. That is the tzniut of Esther. And we're going to read exactly who this woman is, Esther, and how beautiful and how tragic. Shakespeare used to write things called tragic comedies. And I always loved the idea, forget the Shakespeare part, the fact that you could have something which is simultaneously a tragedy, but also a comedy. It's also funny. There are things that are very sad, but also very beautiful. They're heartbreaking, but they're gorgeous. And we're going to read a little bit about that. And maybe we'll see Purim in a different light. The Gemara continues. Ve'amar Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar teaches, when God blesses someone with greatness, He gives him that greatness to carry on from generation to generation. It's not a you-only deal. I remember once someone told me, Rabbi, I'm flying private to Israel. Fadal, you should come with me. I couldn't go with him. I was doing a wedding. But my son-in-law was traveling that day to Israel. I said, I can't go. I have a wedding. I said, but my son-in-law is going. He goes, this was a rabbi deal, not a son-in-law of the rabbi deal. I said, I really appreciate your honesty. Thank you so much. The worst would have been if he has him on the place cursing me out the whole way to Israel. Can't believe the rabbi shafted me, sent me his son-in-law, and he didn't even come with me, right? Okay? So what's it called? So the idea is that something comes not just to you, but it comes to generations and generations after. In fact, there's a halacha like this. Let's say you have someone who was appointed the rabbi of a synagogue, and he has a son, and the son is a rabbi, and he's worthy of the job. But there might be someone who's a little bit more worthy. The halacha is that the job should go to his son. Did you know that? No. It's not that it goes to the best man for the job. If the rabbi's sons are not ra'ui doesn't mean he's a criminal. Not ra'ui means he can't do the job, or he can't do the job well. If he's not ra'ui, doesn't get it. But for someone whose sons are ra'ui, they would get the job before anyone else. That's the halakha. All of the Kohanim come from Aaron, generations. Moshe Rabbeinu, on the other hand, his children do not become the leaders. Why? Because they're not ra'ui for the job. Okay? They might have been great people. They were not ra'ui for the job. Sorry? Let me explain one more time. You could have a guy, a CEO of a company, Ya'ani, okay? Who does the job go to? Who gets first dibs on the job? His son. Okay? When it comes to Gidulah that God gives. All right? However, if it's not an automatic, because at the end of the day, if that person is not ra'ui, he loses it. Ra'ui means worthy of the job.
Okay.
Now, what does that mean? Not worthy of the job means he can't do the job. But let's say he can do the job. It's very interesting. When you have Rabbi Kassin, Cham Yaakov Kassin, who became the next chief rabbi? After him, Cham Shaul, right? So he went down. If the next person in line is worthy of doing the job, the halacha is it goes to them first before you give it to anyone else.
Even if there's a bigger Talmid Chacham.
Even if there's a bigger Talmid Chacham. When do you give it to the bigger Talmid Chacham?
He's not Raui.
When the person is not Raui. Now, not Raui doesn't mean he's a criminal. It means he can't get the job done. So let's say the guy is a great rabbi.
How do we establish if somebody's not Raui or not?
Well, the people that are in charge of the community need to ascertain whether that is or is not the case. Okay?
Shaul appointed his anointed.
Yes?
Chacham.
It is hairy. It is hairy. But I just want you to know that this Gemara is telling you that if the person is Raui, is worthy, and he can do the job, even if you think there's a better guy for the job. So the non-hairy part of this conversation is that no one suggested an alternative. We just let it stay hairy. So I don't know why we think that no one is better than someone. Even if you disagree, even if you don't think, that doesn't mean, right? There's no one else. If there's no one else, why should it not be to someone who is clearly a great person? Is Ra'ui? Okay, but that's a topic for another day. Okay, says the Gemara. V'amar Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar says when a person gives Gidulah, he gives it to him for generations. Shnei Amar. Vayoshivem lanetzach vayigbau. It says in Eyob that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu sits him on the throne, he sits him there eternally. Vayigbau, and God lifts him up. When does he lose it? Vim higis da'ato. And if he loses it, he gets very full, very arrogant. HaKadosh Baruch Hu mashpilo. God puts him down. Shnei Amar, like it says, v'im asurim bezikim. And if they are bound in chains. Now I just want you to see the whole pasuk. Look at the whole pasuk on the side of the Gemara. The Gemara says over here.
Pasuk Vav.
Where are we in the?
Pasuk Vav.
Yes. Yes. V'im asurim. You see it, Eov? V'im asurim bezikim. It's like right in about halfway through the Pesukim on the side of the page. Okay? Can you see it? V'im asurim right over here. V'im asurim Vav. V'im asurim bezikim. And if they are tied up, asur means locked up. We say every day, matir asurim, who unbinds those that are bound. Im asurim bezikim, if they're bound up in chains, yilachedun bechavle oni, then they will be tied up in the strings of poverty. In other words, they'll lose their greatness. Now, I just want to point out something, because, even the simple translation, the simple words of the Gemara, they bring us such powerful lessons. What happens at the end of Shaul's days? Shaul, the pasuk says he had a ruach ra'ah, an evil spirit overcame him. Some people want to say that means some form of depression. I don't know. I don't buy it. It sounds like it was much more than that, right? But the point is that Shaul at that point thinks that David HaMelech is his enemy and he needs to kill David HaMelech. Okay? So he runs around trying to kill him. Yonatan, Shaul's son, is protecting King David, trying to help him, trying to warn him of his father trying to kill him, etc., etc. Okay. Now,
sorry, there's no relation, right?
Between Shaul and David, no. There's no relation.
So Shaul's son wasn't Ra'ui?
Shaul's son Yehonatan was Ra'ui, but he wasn't Ra'ui like David HaMelech. And what you're asking is a great question, and I'm going to come back to that in just 1 second, okay? So Shaul, hegis da'ato, there was an element of arrogance in Shaul, okay? And we already saw this before, that what happened when Natan Hanavi said to David HaMelech, oh, there's one guy, the rich guy, the poor guy, one sheep, he took the one sheep. What does David say? Chatati. What did Shaul say? Well, the people, they told me we were going to do it this way, we're going to do it that way. So Hashem told you had one job. Do this. You think you know better than God? Ray is asking a great question. So Shaul says to Shemuel when he comes back, he says, come with me. Come with me to the people. Shemuel says to Shaul, because you didn't listen, but really also because you didn't admit it right away and say chatati, Hashem tore the melucha away from you, and He gave it to your friend who is better than you. So it says, Shaul says to Shemuel, okay, so come with me, walk to the people, and come with me, we'll go bow to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in front of the people, like walk with me at least. So even in this moment, Shaul was preoccupied with the image, like that the Navi is walking with him.
But don't we read somewhere that arrogance in some cases is good?
Clearly not here, not when it's against God.
Like, don't they say like a Hazan's supposed to have a little swagger, like a little?
Yes, but
arrogance?
imagine the arrogance. Imagine the arrogance made him decide to do something that's not halachic. That's not appropriate. So that's what happened with Shaul. So listen to the end of the story. Shemuel again turns away. Shaul tries to grab Shemuel. So he grabs his cloak. And as he grabs his cloak and Shemuel's walking away, vayikara, and it rips. The clothing, his me'il rips in his hands. And Shemuel says, in the style that the Nevi'im used to do, he says, just like this, did Hashem tear the kingdom away from you. So Ray asked a great question. Wasn't Yehonatan Ra'ui? The answer is yes. But that's when it was never taken from the father. So then it's a question of who does it go to? Once Shaul lost it, it doesn't go to Yonatan automatically. Point number one. Point number two, who was kingship promised to? From the beginning, it was always going to transfer to Yehudah. Shaul was an interim solution from the tribe of Binyamin for who came from Rachel. Now, I just want to throw one last beautiful, dice onto the table. So if a king was supposed to be from Yehudah, so why did Shemuel anoint Shaul?
Right. Wait, one more time.
If kingship is supposed to be from Yehudah, why does Shemuel anoint Shaul in the first place to be the first king?
Maybe nobody was Ra'ui in that family yet.
Huh?
Maybe no one in that family was Ra'ui yet.
Good point. Possibly. Don't appoint anyone. We've never had a king till then.
I heard something. Lay out the framework.
Sorry?
Lay the groundwork.
Come on, guys.
Something I heard from
Maybe.
Wait, in the Gemara, before we hear from anybody. The Siniyut of Rachel. Rachel gave away the ability to be married to Yaakov, to Leah, before her. Who was supposed to be married? Rachel was supposed to be first. She gave what was supposed to be hers first to Leah. So the kingship, which was supposed to come to Leah, where to go first? To Rachel. And how does it manifest? In the tziniut of Shaul. Okay? Unbelievable. Now, so when we look at this, I want to point out, because every word of the Gemara is so special. The Gemara says something unbelievable. It says, and to those, how do we prove this idea that if you're arrogant, you lost it? We bring the pasuk in Eov. The pasuk says, "V'im asurim bezikim," and if they're bound up in chains, then yilachidun. What's the end of the pasuk? B'chav leoni. They'll be tied up in strings, in ropes of poverty. In other words, they'll lose what they had. But I just want to point out one thing. What's the language we are using for arrogance?
No, that was my question.
If they are bound in chains. My friends, arrogance is a prison.
Because I was looking, I said, where's the word haughty in Hebrew? I don't see it.
Excellent. Yeah, there you go. Arrogance is prison. It doesn't let you do the right thing. It doesn't let you do the smart thing. It doesn't let you do the thing that's best for you. Because you're bound up in your own image and how people talk about you and what they say. I quoted this yesterday, one of my favorite quotes. We spend money we don't have to buy things we don't need to impress people we don't like. Why? It's so stupid. And you know what? However stupid it is, we're not free of it. Asurim bezikim. We're bound sometimes inexplicably by the stupidity. We know it's not the right thing. But unfortunately, we're tied up. And when a person does that, in those moments, what happens? It gets taken away. He goes away. B'chav le'oni, in the strings, in the ropes of poverty. So why do we bring this? We brought this to be able to answer. Amen. We brought this to be able to answer the end of the pasuk that we quoted earlier. What was the pasuk we quoted earlier? Lo yigra mitzadik enav. That God doesn't take his eyes off the tzaddik. He pays attention. What'd you do? Don't worry, it's coming back to you. No good deed goes unpunished. Hashem makes sure that everything that you did is going to come back. Everything will, in the end of time, everything's going to come full circle. The end of that pasuk is this. So it sounds like when you first read it, the Gemara is only telling you, okay, and this is the interpretation of the end of the pasuk. But to think of it that way is to miss the beauty of the connection of the haughtiness of Shaul, which wound up losing him the gift that came to him because of tziniut. It's wild. Now let's continue. The Gemara says, "Vet ma'amar Mordechai Esther osa," and the words of Mordechai Esther used to do. What is ma'amar Mordechai? The words of Mordechai. Says the Gemara. Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah. Rabbi Yirmiyah says, "Shahayita mar'eh dam nida lechachamim," that she used to show the blood of nida. She would show the cloth that would, if she wasn't sure if the color she was seeing from her period was actual blood that was asur or not, she would send the cloth to the chacham on the lowdown to be able to know if she was a nida. Now the Gemara is wondering, what do you mean? Kasher et ma'amar, whatever Mordechai taught her, Esther used to do, kasher hayta be'omna ito, like she was when she was with him. Okay? The Gemara says, kasher hayta be'omna ito, what does that mean? Amar Rabba Bar Lima. Rabba Bar Lima says, Mash Mishmeh, in the name of Rav, Sha'ita omedet mecheko shel Achashverosh. She would stand up from the lap of Achashverosh, v'tovelet, and go to the mikveh, v'yoshevet becheko shel Mordechai. And she would sit in the lap of Mordechai. What does that mean?
Married.
According to what we said earlier, Ray, she was married to Mordechai. We have the strangest, craziest, wildest, insanest love triangle you could ever imagine in your life.
Wow.
Effectively, Achashverosh, every time he's with her, is raping his wife. And if she was with him willingly, she would become asur to her husband as a sotah, or as a zonah, okay? But since it's against her will, and she has no choice, so it does not make her not allowed to be with her husband.
Only if he was a Kohen.
Only if he was a Kohen. If he was a Kohen, it would be a problem, okay? But he was not a Kohen. So Mordechai, we know, is Ishimini from tribe of Binyamin. So my friends, what happens over here? She goes to Achashverosh. Achashverosh is with her. She's showing her nidah cloths to the Chachamim. Why? Not for Achashverosh. For Mordechai. Could you imagine someone that's living this life? This is the tragedy. Everyone thinks Purim is such a beautiful, what a happy story. Yay, everyone's dressed with beautiful music.
I don't understand the significance
Of what?
of her being with Hashverosh and then taking the sample
Yeah.
to the Chachamim. What is?
It's not from Achashverosh.
No.
It's that she was keeping the laws of family purity and checking the blood to see if she was allowed to be with Mordechai. That means that she was still being intimate with Mordechai.
Wow.
Isn't that wild?
But she was having relations with the Chashverosh when she was Nida. Theoretically.
Against her will.
Could be.
She has
Could be. He
pikuach
might have put her in
nefesh,
that
forcing her. Yes.
There's no standards.
Exactly. Forcing her pikuach nefesh. She has no options there. Right? But when it comes to Mordechai, Ma'amar Mordechai Esther osa, says the pasuk that even, could you imagine someone who's going through this trauma? And the last thing in the world you're thinking about is, am I kosher or not? Shema Yisrael. What an unbelievable, but you're starting to see the characters of the Midrash emerge in 3D. Ya'eni, in such a different perspective. Omedet mecheko shel Achashverosh, v'tovelet. So why did she go to Tevilah? So what does she need Tevilah for? So if it was the blood and she saw, so she was doing Tevilah for her nidah. But it sounds like from the Gemara she's doing Tevilah every time.
Yeah.
Go to the bath. Go take a shower.
Right.
Why Tevilah?
Clean out
The answer is Mordechai felt that there was an impurity here of what's it called. And I thought to myself, how crazy. We said earlier that she didn't tell that she was from Mordechai, even that she was married to him before, because Achashverosh would have looked at the fact. He never would have wanted to be with someone that was with Mordechai. And here she's doing Tevilah because the idea that she's with a Rasha is the anathema to Mordechai. Yeah, and the story is just so, in many ways, it's a heartbreaking story of self-sacrifice of Esther for the Jewish people. Let's continue. Gemara says, In those days, Mordechai is sitting in the gateway of the king, right? Katzaf Bigtan Vateresh. The two guards of the king they get angry and they want to kill the king. We'll see exactly why. Amar Reb Chia bar Abba, Amar Reb Yochanan. Hiksiv HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Adon al Avadav. HaKadosh Baruch Hu got a master angry at his servants, La'asot Ritzon Tzadik, to do the will of the Tzadik. When did HaKadosh Baruch Hu get a king angry at his servants? In Paro, right? Shneimar, like it says, V'sham itanu nar ivri. There was a Hebrew young man, right? And therefore, Achashverosh had to get angry at his Sarah Mashkim and his Sarah Ofim. Chazal tell us, Paro. Chazal tell us that what was he angry at them for? The Gemara tells us that the Sarah Ofim, the baker, what did he have? What got into the bread? A pebble. The Sarah Mashkim, the butler, what got into the wine? Fly. Now, in the end, he kills the baker and he allows the butler to live. Why is there a discrepancy between the butler and the baker? So the Chachamim explain. Sorry?
You can't. A fly is natural.
Exactly. The fly, you can't stop flying in. The pebble should have been sifted out. So the butler, it's his problem. My friends, if that's the answer why he didn't kill him, why did he throw him in prison?
What do you mean? Why? It's obvious.
Sorry?
Obvious.
Why?
To do the whole Yosef item.
No, so I'm saying that's what the Gemara is telling us. So there's no logic.
From a logical standpoint.
From a logical perspective, there's no reason why you should have gone to prison. Who should have gone to prison? The butler, the baker.
Only the baker.
Only the baker. So if the whole point of this was in order to get Yosef out of prison, so what does the butler got to go to prison for? Just send the baker. Because that's actually logical. And that's less of a miracle. God doesn't have to tip his hand. The answer is, you're forgetting the story. They wake up in the prison. They're all bad face. Yosef says, what's the matter? The guy tells him, we have a dream. He says, tell me your dream. Who tells him the dream first? The butler. The butler tells him the dream. Yosef tells him the 3 things of grapes represent 3 days. You're serving Paro means you're going to be returned to your post. Hazaku Baruch. Misha Berach. Says the Pasuk. The Sar HaOfim saw. We have a Chumash. Someone pass me a Chumash. There's one right out there. He gets me one every day. Every week. Is that Chamisha Chumsheh?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. We got one. Stephen.
Someone should want it.
Stephen, I got one. Thank you. Okay. So I want to read you the pasuk, and it's gonna jump out at you. I want to see who's gonna chop it, who's gonna grab it first. Okay. Look, only God could know. The butler tells his dream to Joseph. Yosef tells him, this is what it means. He's going to put you back on your post, blah, 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 just like it used to be. But remember, why? He gives them a whole spiel. Listen carefully. Vayar Sar HaOfim ki tov patar vayomer el Yosef af ani bechalomi v'hinei shlosha saleh chorei al roshi. I also had a dream and I had 3 baskets on my head. What did you notice?
Yeah, he saw the way he interpreted the first one, so he maybe
Was hoping to get a
so he
positive.
lied about his dream in the second one. Who knows?
No, you were on the right
He
track.
was hoping to get a positive
Only
interpretation
answer
too.
the first is a good.
Clearly in the pasuk, it says that the only reason why the baker tells him his dream is because ki tov patar. He saw that he got a good interpretation on the first dream, indicating that the Sarah Mashkim and the Sarah Ofim were not the same person. The Sarah Mashkim tells his dream without any good interpretations preceding it.
No expectation.
He's a jabberer. He wants to tell his dream. It's clear from the pasuk that it's not just that he went second. It's that he would not have gone without the first guy. My friends, if that's the case, the only reason why the Yosef's interpretation is impressive is because he gets to interpret the first guy, and he gets to interpret the second guy, and there's two different outcomes, and the two different outcomes become true. So if there's no butler in the story, first of all, the baker doesn't even share his dream. And second of all, there's no way to prove that Yosef is right, because it's a 50-50 chance.
Yeah.
It's only after he gets this unbelievable opportunity that Yosef is proven as a person who really knows, so he gets mentioned. So therefore, says the Gemara.
The butler to remind Pharaoh.
Sorry?
Pharaoh, he forgets. The butler forgets.
The butler forgets for a different reason.
And then
Yeah.
Pharaoh, he's the one who tells Pharaoh.
He's the one who tells Pharaoh, but he tells Pharaoh because he's got a track record. Yeah?
That doesn't explain why he went to jail in the first place.
He had to go to jail in the first place because otherwise the setup doesn't work. The whole point over here is...
There is no logical answer.
No. The whole point is that it's in order that for the tzaddik to have what he needs. But the question is, why do we need that chess piece? You only need one. The answer is, number one, if there's only one, then there's none.
You want to know why?
Because if there's no opponent, if there's no protagonist.
You know, it's not fair. It was for the tzaddik. It's clear. It's for the tzaddik. Okay? Now, let's carry on.
That's right. You needed that for the story of Yosef.
Yes, you need that for the story of Yosef.
Trying to prove out big time v'teresh.
But we're just trying to explain that this is how far it goes, la'asot ritzon tzaddik, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu causes a master to get angry at his servants. And now this says the Gemara, the opposite. And where do we find the opposite? Avadim al adoneim. God also causes avadim to get angry at their masters. La'asot nes tzaddik, to do a miracle for the tzaddik. Umanu, who's that? Mordechai. That's Mordechai. Dechtiv, like it says, Vayivada hadavar, and it became known to Mordechai, leMordechai, whatever happened to Bigtan Vateresh. Now, it's important to understand, what we're saying over here is, in order for there to be a miracle for Mordechai, the servants got angry at their master. Now, I want to point this out. How do you know that Paro was just not a megalomaniac, Majnun guy? The answer is, because it would make sense for the baker. It wouldn't make sense for the butler. And we're going to see now as well that it would not make sense for the avadim, for the servants to get angry at their boss for what happened. It didn't make sense. It must be only to be able to do the miracle for the tzaddik. I want to give you some extra credit to think about. The first time we find la'asot ritzon tzaddik, to do the will of the tzaddik by Yosef. What does it say in the second time? La'asot nes letzaddik. Why the discrepancy when you're talking about Yosef needing the story to crack his way and Mordechai needing the story to crack his way? Why is one called Ritzon Tzaddik and one called Nes Tzaddik? I'm going to let you think about that one. Let's continue. We have 2 minutes left. Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan now is going to delve into what they got angry about. Bigtan Vateresh Shnei Tarsim Hayu. They were two people from the country of Tarsa. Okay? Tursi. And they were speaking in Tursi. From the day that this woman came, Ya'ani Esther, we've not had a chance to sleep even once. He keeps us up all night. Why? Because he was so excited about Esther. He was together with Esther every single night.
I feel like Mordechai's hearing this.
Bifledge. Right? Could you imagine? But by the way, 100%. And now, by the way, now that we saw this Gemara, what do we understand? We understand something that comes later. And I'll say exactly what I mean, just a second. From the day this woman came, we don't get to sleep. Why? They're the guards. And they were being asked all the time, Shomrei Asaf, we'll see in a second what that means. But, right? They were called the Shomrei Asaf, the guards of the doorway. But Shomrei Asaf also means Saf, short for Sefer, which means the bowl. They wanted to poison the bowl. What does that mean they're going to poison the bowl? He was asking all the time because of his vigorous activity. He was asking for water. He was very thirsty, Achashverosh. So they were bringing him water. commentators want to know why the guards of the door are bringing him water. One opinion is that they were only guards of the bowl. One opinion is that they were guards, not of the bowl, they were guards of the doorway. But because it was now all night long, everyone else in the palace went to sleep. So now they had to be the ones, for all night they were running back and forth giving the king water. It also helps us understand, by the way, why they chose this specific death for him. Why are they poisoning his water instead of chopping his head off? The answer is because that was what got them angry. They were constantly running for the water. Another opinion, to me, in my mind, I don't get paid enough. This is not my job. I did not sign up for this. Imagine a guy, you're a Navy SEAL. You work your whole life to be the guy that does this standing next to the president. You're the guy who takes the bullet. The eagle has landed. You're that guy. Now all day long, you're on Poland spring runs.
Diaper runs.
The guy goes Majnun. That's one of the reasons why they poisoned the Saf, because they felt it was not appropriate, that this is what they should be doing all day, all night. There's another interpretation, by the way, PG interpretation, that he was fascinated with Esther, and he was up all night hacking, talking, not doing other things. Right. That's the PG version. Why does he have her up all night talking?
Trying to find out where she's from.
Excellent! There's nothing he could do to crack this nut. He's going Majnun. So he all the time is talking to her, hoping they'll be able to get her to tip her hand. The hand lo hayu yodi'in. So they're talking in Tursi. They thought that they were clear to be talking in Tursi about their treasonous plans. They did not know. He was one of the members of the Sanhedrin. Where did the Sanhedrin sit? In the Lishkata Gazit, in the room of hewn stone. That was the special place where the Sanhedrin used to meet in the time of the Bet HaMikdash. But as we know, once the Bet HaMikdash was destroyed, the members of Sanhedrin left. Some of them left when they had to. Mordechai, we already saw last time, he left early to go and prepare Persia for the Jewish people. And he knew all 70 languages. Everyone, by the way, everyone who was a member of Sanhedrin had to know all 70 languages. Interesting thing that. Why did they have to know all 70 languages? Why is that a prerequisite for being on the Sanhedrin?
Someone came with a question from anywhere in the world.
Good, interesting. Why don't I need one of them? Let him translate.
Different languages have different interpretations on how it...
Interesting, very good. But again, don't you need one? Have one.
But what if that one guy makes a mistake?
Maybe for this reason. Interesting.
Also, what if one makes a mistake?
One rulership. You wanted to know everything about everyone.
Well, who wanted to? No, I'm asking, why did every member of the Sanhedrin have to know all 70 languages? Let every guy have one language.
Checks and balances.
Huh?
Checks and balances.
No.
How do you have a discussion?
This is very interesting.
Not checks and balances?
This is very interesting. Language expresses and communicates about a culture. Like, I'll give you an example. You know, every culture, you can tell a lot about what is important to the culture by how many words it has for the same thing. So Jews, we have many words for speaking. Vayomer, vayidaber. How many words do we have for simcha? Sason, simcha, rina, gilad, yitzach, edva. Right? All these different languages expressing joy. How many words do we have that mean prayer? There's over 10 different expressions that mean tefillah, that mean prayer. Brought down in the Sefer Rabbi Shimshon Pinkus called Sha'arim B'Tefillah, amazing book. Okay? So you could tell a lot about a culture by the language it uses. If the Chachamim were meant to be able to express the laws of the Torah in every language, to every culture, to every place the Jewish people would ever be, you are not a member of Sanhedrin if you don't know how to apply the Torah to every Jew from every place. And where's the origin source for this law? God says to Moshe, when you get across to Eretz Israel, he gives a commandment to Yehoshua. Put these big stones, and you're going to put seed on them, and you're going to write the Torah in all 70 languages. Wow. What was the idea? Exactly this. So the Chachamim needed to know that. Happens to be, as Ray pointed out, this came out to be an incredible boon to the Jewish people. Mordechai finds out that they're going to poison the king's water. Amar lo, he said to him, Ve'alo, en mishmarti mishmartecha shaveh. Bigtan turns to Teresh, or Teresh turns to Bigtan, I don't know. He says to him, what do you mean? Like, we can't do that. Our jobs don't line up. If you go get the wine, or you go get the water, then there's not going to be anyone guarding the door, or vice versa. Different opinions as to what this means. Amar lo, ani eshmor mishmarti mishmartecha. Don't worry, I'll double cover. You go get the poison, the snake for the water. You do that, and that's how it works. And that's what it means. They were able to check, and they were able to find out that it was true. What does that mean? So normally, what did they do? They fed the poison to a dog, or to the guy you suspected of poisoning the king. You didn't poison, it's just water. Yeah, exactly. But Chazal are telling us that they didn't need to do that. Why? Since they had different jobs and one had to cover for the other, as soon as Mordechai revealed the news to Achashverosh, all Achashverosh had to do was go check if Bigtan was where Bigtan was supposed to be. And if Teresh was guarding Bigtan's job, what did that mean? That means that Mordechai was right, that the plot thickens and he's about to be killed. The Gemara says, after these things, what does that mean? Achar mai. What does it mean? It means specifically following this. Now there's two expressions that we could say after this. One is achareh, vahi achareh, and it was after. That just means it was after. Achar means immediately following. When something immediately follows, you have to ask yourself, what is the connection between these two things? So achar devarim ha'eleh, after this means not just after this, coincidentally, sequentially, after this means because this has now transpired, this can now occur. What happens after this story of the revelation of the plot against the king? Gadala melech et Haman. Why? Says the Gemara, Amar Rava Amar, Achar shebara HaKadosh Baruch Hu refuah lemaka, after HaKadosh Baruch Hu created refuah, a healing lemaka to the sickness. The Amar Rish Lakish explained, En HaKadosh Baruch Hu makat Israel, ela im ke borei lahem refuah tichila. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, before he even creates a sickness, he makes sure that the cure for the Jewish people is there. Shnei Amar, like it says, Kirofil Yisrael, v'nigla avon Ephraim. When I heal the Jewish people, then nigla avon Ephraim. Then I'm going to pay. I'm going to visit the punishment on Ephraim for the mistakes, but only after I've already created the refuah. Why? Avalumot ha'olam, when it comes to the nations of the world, enoken, doesn't work that way. Makeotan, first he hits them, v'achar kach borei lahem refuah, and after that he creates the refuah. Shnei Amar, v'nagaf Hashem et Mitzrayim, nagof v'rafo. HaKadosh Baruch Hu hit Egypt, he hit them. And after that, he healed them. Why does HaKadosh Baruch Hu have this discrepancy between the Jewish people and the nations of the world? Since the nations of the world, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has an eternal covenant. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has an eternal covenant with us. Since HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows that the Jewish people always make it to the other side, so there'll never be a case where refuah is not necessary. So therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu creates the refuah before the makkah even comes. But with the nations of the world, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has, at some point, wiped out the nation. The nations no longer exist. Why? Because after they did the avon, they didn't do teshuvah. So therefore, I'm not going to create the refuah until there's a need for that refuah. So therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu hits them. If you do teshuvah, Hazaku Baruch, like the people of Nineveh, non-Jewish, they did teshuvah. The city was supposed to be turned over. HaKadosh Baruch Hu saved them. But that refuah is only created afterwards. And we'll continue with this idea, Bezat Hashem, next week. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen.